welcome to the BetterU Podcast, where we go in depth and get to listen to stories of hope, strength, and courage, straight from some of the leading health, fitness, and wellness experts who help transform lives one person at a time. I am your host, RKaye, and today we are joined by the lovely Danielle, an author, speaker, and empowerment coach.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I am very excited for you to be with us today. So how are things going with you?
Really good. I'm actually having a great day. I cried twice today in a good way, like good cry, like beautiful life cry. So, that's a good day for me.
That's amazing. Danielle, I've seen your work and it's very relatable
Thank you.
You do, and I love your content. Can you tell us a little more about what it is that you do exactly and how did this whole thing begin for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I do now is I work with women and humans around the world on elevating their self-worth, their mindset, and their self-belief so they can create and manifest a life that they absolutely freaking love. And the core of why I do that is because I had a very crazy journey and story myself that made me realize what is possible when you combine the power of self-belief and taking risk and leaning into fear and working on your mindset. Because, I would not be here today as an Olympian, as an author, if I didn't combine all of the things that I teach my clients now. And so my journey really started when I was 8 years old in Vancouver, Canada, where I was born. And I started this crazy little sport of synchronized swimming. And I was never really talented. I was never really that good, but I just loved my sport. And I think I really always emphasize that because I think that when we hear from Olympians nowadays, we're always like, they were always the best of the best. Yeah. And that wasn't my case. And I, through a crazy turn of events, ended up at the Olympic Games competing for Australia in 2016. I went to 3 World Championships, got to make history in my sport in 2019. And I still have moments where I'm in awe and shock. And so there was a lot of pieces to how that actually happened. And part of it was, leaning into fear and taking opportunity while also realizing that my biggest attribute to work on is my mind. And when I put my mind to something, I can actually create that. And so that's pretty cool to see. And so that's inspired my work today.
That's amazing. And like you mentioned, you do a lot of inner work, a lot of mindset work. So could you let us know, or could you give us a little sneak peek at how do you start, or usually when you have a beginner client who comes in and asks for your help, how do you usually begin that journey for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So it just starts with getting to know them because, the more that I know someone, the more that I can help them. And then we really start working on their belief systems, right? And so, a revolutionary quote that I was told years ago that I don't know why this isn't the first thing that we're taught in school is that not all the thoughts in our head are true. And so many of us walk around with these thoughts and beliefs that we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not this, X, Y, Z, whatever it is, we're not blank enough. We feel insecure, we struggle with our self-worth, we struggle with, just really believing that we have the capacity to do what we love and want to create in this world. And I could almost bet on that every single person has some type of limiting belief or some type of struggle or some type of fear that they're dealing with. And so really we have to look at that. And so when I say the power of doing the inner work is that it's not just, okay, what is my goal? What do I want to achieve in life? How do I go after that? That's the external thing. But the real change is when you work internally. How can I believe more deeply in myself? What are the things and the experiences that have happened in my past that make me feel like I'm not enough, right? So for some people, they have been through trauma. For some people, they have been through failure. For some people, they have been been through really adverse experiences, or even their parents have been. You know, a big thing that I think that we're dealing with, you know, as this next generation as well is, you know, intergenerational trauma. And I say that in a space where, you know, a lot of our families didn't have the capacity to do the mental health and well-being work that we're doing today. You know, a lot of our families, especially in Canada, they're immigrants. They had to really work really hard. They had much more adverse circumstances, and we have so much more ease in our life nowadays. But if our family didn't have the capacity to do that, that belief system can be passed down onto us. And so sometimes it's the beliefs that we have in our life based on what happened in our childhood, or sometimes it's beliefs that we're carrying from our parents, right? Beliefs about money, beliefs about being able to actually do a job that we love, beliefs around hard work, beliefs around you know, creating a career, beliefs around relationship. And so it's really, the first step is really an unwiring and a relearning of what it actually means to be a human with a mind, and how we actually deal with that in everyday circumstances.
That is that's amazing. See what I told you, like, our audience should be able to see all the work that you are currently doing, because it's just mind-blowing pretty much. Like, I have no other words for it. Essence, for you, how do you normally begin your own day? Like, what is your own mindset when you begin your day, when you start your day, when you get to work with other people? How does that work for you?
Yeah, so I'm definitely a morning person. I love the mornings. And don't get me wrong, I love to sleep in as well, but I just really love being up in the morning. And so for me, it's creating time and space for myself. And to be realistic, you know, I used to hear about this when I was training, you know, as an athlete, and in those times I would have training at 5 a.m. and then for a couple hours, and then I would work all day. And so people that tell me they'd have a morning routine, I'm like, screw you, I don't have time to have a morning routine. I wake up at 4. You know, but what I used to do is, like, I'd wake up and I'd literally look at my phone and scroll social media straight away, because it was the only way that woke me up, the blue light. Yeah. And that's also, you know, not in the best state to start our day, because the first thing that we do is we're consuming from other people, right?
Yeah.
And so just little things that started to change my habits were, okay, well, what if I just, even before I got out of bed, or before, you know, like, I don't have my phone in my room now, which is huge. Get an alarm clock, get an Alexa or Google Home, honestly, life-changing. And I just take a moment to, you know, be grateful for the life that I'm living. And, you know, sometimes I think about my dreams, sometimes, you know, lots of different things. Have a conversation with my fiance, and then I go out and I take some time for myself. So I do meditation. And again, to give people context, when I started meditation years ago, I could barely meditate for a minute. I was like, literally, my mind was so like bing, 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 that I like could not sit still. And so that was a big practice. And then I journal, and that just kind of gets me in a good feeling for the day. And then I love to, you know, go for a walk or go to the gym, and then that kind of puts me out on the right foot. But I love my mornings and my morning space, because I find when I have that, I just feel so much better all day.
That sounds very, very relaxing, actually. Yeah. Honestly, like, I barely get a morning routine. Like you said, like, everybody was like ranting and raving about that, and I'm like, no morning routine whatsoever.
Yeah. I think, and it's also like different for everyone, right? Because I think we have to work with where our life is at. Like, I don't have kids right now. Like, I'm sure it'll change. Like, depending on people's work schedules. And that's why I think when I first started my morning routines, I was like, it has to be like this and this long. I say to my clients, like, it might mean literally taking 3 minutes for yourself before you go running into your day. And that's enough, right? And some days it changes. Like, I'm not perfect either. I just want people to know that I'm so not perfect. But it's just the intention of how can I create even like a moment for me before I start my day.
That is very true. And speaking of your clients, what are your normal practices? Like, when you have a first-time client, or let's say comparing your first-time client to clients that you've already been with for so long, what's one practice that most of them would normally have at the same, or something that's similar that they practice?
Yeah, so it's very different. You know, I work with a lot of women in like group spaces. I love group programs. I think being and seeing yourself in other women. So, you know, like is really powerful. Like I work with women from like 18 to like 65. Like we all have self-worth work to do. We all have that, you know, that I think is so needed. And so it looks different for every single one of us. You know, I do always like say that starting with meditation is something that's really powerful. And especially if you're resistant to it. You know, I had a client recently where she like a 5-minute meditation was so hard for her. And this is the thing about meditation, like it's not that you have to sit there and think of nothing. I think that's such a huge misconception, right?
Sure.
It's just that you actually have to like really work on just being a little bit more still, and you can focus on something. You can visualize your day, you can think about the things you're grateful for, you can just focus on your breath. It's just really slowing down that mind, because I'm a really fast-paced, busy person at times, you know, and especially when I was like multitasking and being an athlete and all of this, that it really helped center me. And so, and again, like this isn't revolutionary what I'm saying, right? It's not, no one's gonna be like, oh my God, I've never heard of meditation before, right? Like these are things that we've heard of and we know that work. And my my thing for my clients is just do it in a way that works for you. So for some people, like I'm a morning person, I love getting up in the mornings, but some of my clients are night owls and they're like, you know, I feel better doing my stuff at night. I'm like, cool, you do it at nighttime, as long as you create space for yourself in the day, because I think sometimes our days can get so filled up with doing things and, you know, women doing things for other people. Like what if you create 10-15 minutes every day to devote to your goals, your dreams, your desires, the life that you're actually wanting to build?
That is true. And like you mentioned, a lot of women do tend to concentrate on helping others, but through doing that, a lot of the time they forget about themselves and forget about taking care of themselves. Now, speaking of women, do you have women that are an inspiration to you? Do you have a mentor that you look up to? And what is it that person left you with, or what are the best lessons that you've learned from those people?
Oh my gosh, good question. I have so many. I feel like that's a hard question to answer because Oprah has always been a huge inspiration to me. I was watching Oprah from when I was like little. I'd get home from school and me and my mom would watch Oprah together. And so I love Oprah's like tenacity. Like she's quite bold, but she also is very spiritual. That's really huge for me. In whatever spirituality means for you. And so she's a big expander for me. A lot of my coaches throughout my years were huge role models for me. Just seeing strong women has been really powerful. I recently, even today, I had a call with a lady who is definitely an expander. I use the word expander, so it's kind of people like expand your idea of what's possible. She's a big expander for me because she has a really successful and impactful business, and she's also a mom to little humans. And that's, I'm looking at in the next 10 years becoming a mother. And so I'm like, I'm really trying to find people that change this dialogue of like either we're a stressed out, overworked, tired working mom or a stay-at-home mom. And I'm like, how can I find the balance? So, one of the things that, all of these mentors have just shown me is really anything is possible when you put your mind to it. And your job is to put blinders on to what other people say and think about your life and focus on what you believe and what you want to create, because that's so incredibly important. And when you have consistency and compound that, you can actually see it materialize in your reality.
That's amazing. Now, speaking of, you mentioned beliefs and what we often kind of have inherited beliefs from our parents or everyone else who are, an influence to us during our younger years. Is there, for you, was there ever a certain belief that you stuck with when you were growing old? And then as you were growing old, you were telling yourself, hey, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, so like an unhelpful belief, is that what you mean?
Yes, exactly.
My core wound that I have been working on, and I'll explain this, like, and I'm still working on, is this belief that I'm just not enough. You know, and I know that might sound silly because people go, well, you're an Olympian and you did all this. And so this is why I think when we start to get into this work, it's super powerful to understand that all of our, we could say, core wounds, limiting beliefs, there's a shadow side and there's also a light side to that. So the shadow side is the fact that me feeling not enough at my core has in the past, it has impacted my confidence, my self-belief, my self-worth. It has held me back from putting myself out in situations. But also the light side of that is that there is my ego, or my, you know, I mean, you're an athlete as well, like your competitive side that wants to prove to myself that I am enough. And so we can use that core wound or the limiting belief either as a shadow and to hold us back, you know, and I think this is where we also need to do the work and really look at this, like, where did this belief stem from? Why did it come up? You know, and ask ourselves at the same time, like, is this ultimately true? Because it's never true. But we still battle it. Like, I still have moments even now where this comes up. But then also remembering the light side of that, which is, well, I also know that if I didn't have the belief that I'm not enough, that I wouldn't have the tenacity and the persistence and the drive to actually go after my Olympic dream. Because there was so much inside of me that just going after the Olympics, I wanted to prove to myself that I actually was enough. And that fire from having that core wound or that core belief actually has created who I am, because I wanted to push against it so hard. And I think that this is a really important conversation for more of us to have, is like, how can we use those limiting beliefs or those unhelpful thoughts also as fuel to our fire and our desire in our life? Because that can also be really powerful in creating our realities. So we create the evidence in our life that it's not true.
Yeah, that is quite true, and that is something that I do agree with. A lot of people do tend to look at things on the negative side more than on the positive side of things. And so while you do mention that it was quite like a surprise that you became an Olympian, could you tell us, I'm so curious about it. How did it all begin, or how did it fall into place? And what was the best experience that you had as an Olympian?
Yes. So I know people are always like, well, if you know, my book is called The Unlikely Olympian, you know, and so people are like, well, how did you become an Olympian if you said that you like weren't that good? So this is kind of a bit of the backstory. I spent all of I love synchronized swimming from a young age, and I competed in the sport all through high school in Canada, and I actually got the opportunity to go to nationals. But I want to keep in mind for everyone, like, I was like the equivalent of being benched, right? Like, I was the reserve. So I got to go with the team, but I wasn't necessarily the most talented. I was probably one of the least talented on the team, and I knew that. But I had this deep passion for what I did. And this is what I think is so important for us to remember. If you love something, do it. Just do it. It doesn't matter how good you are at it. If it brings you joy, just do it, right? Exactly. And so I did it because I loved it. But then I also knew once I got to year 12 that I just didn't really have there was no trajectory. There's nowhere for me to go. And I was like, it wasn't even the realm of my consciousness that I would have made the national team in Canada. Like, I was not good. And so I quote unquote retired, but I stayed involved in the sport. I was coaching little girls, and I was swimming, you know, with my friends, like at a much more recreational level. Just a couple hours a week. And what ended up happening is, well, there's a couple things. So there was one day when I was training in 2013 where and when I say training, this is just for fun, we were doing highlights. Highlights in synchronized swimming is when we build a human pyramid underwater, and we all egg beater up to the surface, and we create like a spring, and then the person on top jumps and does a flip and comes down. Yeah. It's like phenomenal. It's the coolest sport in the world. And so my teammate jumped up and she came down and landed on my head. And so we don't have, it's not like football, it's not gridiron, like we don't have any protection, like that's a human falling on your head, right? And so I was pulled out of the water and I just felt a little nauseous and I didn't feel the best, but I was okay. But I ended up driving home that night. I felt really sick. I had a bad headache and things were starting to be a little bit confusing to me. I ended up being diagnosed with a concussion. And so I had to stop uni at the time because I couldn't even really read the words on the paper. Like, I was really suffering from a lot of headaches and confusion. And, you know, the only way to be cured from a concussion. Like, you can't take a pill. Like, there's no surgery.
Yeah.
You can fix your brain. Our brains are very, very important. So I could just like lie in a dark room and rest. And that's kind of like the starting period when I started meditation, because there was like nothing else for me to do. Right? Other than meditate. And so I was in this state of real depression and real heartache, and kind of really questioning, like, why did this happen to me? And we all have these moments in our life, right? Where we kind of shake our fist at the sky and saying, like, why me? What did I do? But little did I know that it was really this redirection and realignment. And so the day I had my 21st birthday at the time, and the day afterwards, my friend was calling me, and we were having a chat. She used to be an old teammate of mine. And when we were on the phone, actually, she got a message on Facebook from the assistant national team coach of the Australian synchronized swimming team. The synchronized swimming world is quite small. This coach had used to coach in Vancouver and knew her. And my friend, funny enough, had dual citizenship with Australia. And so she asked her, it was 2013 at the time, and she asked her, she's like, it's after the London Olympics in 2012, a lot of the girls retired, and so they were recreating the team. And so at the time, she was asking her if she'd want to come try out for the national team. And this was just crazy, amazing opportunity. We so often cheer on our friends, right? I was like, you got to go for it. This is awesome. You do it. And she was always better than me when we were training. And so after about 15 minutes of us celebrating her, she turns around and looks at me. My parents are from Australia. They're both from Sydney. I have dual citizenship as well. And so she looks at me and she's like, Danielle, like, you could do this too. Like, we could go together. Like, you could go try it too. And I was like, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm concussed. I'm like in Canada, that's in Australia. And also, like, let's just remember, I was never the most talented. And so even though I basically had this laundry list of things stacked against me, I had this little twinkling of hope inside of me. I had this moment where I was like, well, what if? What if I did? Like, I know this is astronomically crazy, but what if I just tried, right? And I felt like this was a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like, this doesn't come around twice. And people say this to me, and I think this is really important. People say, well, Danielle, what if I don't have an opportunity like that? I'm not going to get an Olympic opportunity. But we all have opportunities in our life, right? They come, but sometimes we don't see them. Or sometimes we don't even qualify ourselves for that level because we don't think we're good enough. And so I think that it's important when these times, these small moments come around in our life, we ask ourselves, like, who do I want to be in this moment? At the end of my life, when I'm looking back on this decision, right, this fork in the road of my timeline, what decision do I wish that I had made? Would I say that I walked away because I was scared of failure, or I was scared of what people would say? I just thought it was so impossible? Or would I rather have said that I chose to be brave and lean into that fear and go for it no matter what? Because my biggest fear was a fear of regret and a fear of wondering who I could have been if I was brave enough. And so that thought turned into a flame, turned into a bonfire inside of me. And I knew everyone was going to judge me. I knew people would think I was absolutely freaking crazy, but I also knew that I didn't want to live my life for them. And I didn't want to wonder who I could have been. And so I went all in as you could have. Within 6 weeks, I was on a plane to Perth, Australia. I really kicked my concussion into high gear. I went to Australia for the first training camp. And keep in mind, when I went to the training camp, there were 16 girls, and I was the bottom of 16. I was not that good. But again, I had a 1 in 16 chance, right? I was like, oh, right? It's like how you look at the glass, half empty or half full. And so I thought, okay, you know what? I'm at the bottom of this, but there is a tiny possibility. I'm just going to run with that. And so within 6 months, I officially moved to Australia. I dropped out of university. I was going to UBC at the time. And I left everything behind me, my family, everything. And I said, I'm going to go all in and I'm going to go for this. And I'm just going to see what will happen. And so one of the things that was a huge shift for me is that when I put myself in the environment of, having the national team around me and qualifying, being around those girls and having that coach, I started to improve really fast. And I was a little bit older. I was 21 at the time, but some of my other teammates were like 17. And so I had the awareness that I was like, okay, well, there's only so many hours. As an athlete, we know there's only so many hours in a day that you can work. And it's, if you go above that, then you're not actually helping yourself. But what can I do to improve? I started to work on my mindset. I started to work on I would journal every single day on how can I go to training with an intention? What intention do I have? How can I reflect on how I did at the end of my training sessions? And to keep in mind, like synchronized swimmers, we train 6 hours a day in the water, 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours on land, 6 days a week. We train a lot. Synchronized swimmers are very hard workers. And so that became my obsession and, really going after this. And I started improving over the time. And I started going from the bottom of the team. By the time I qualified for the Olympic team, I was actually number 4. And I say that I say this because all the things, how like every sport kind of has their natural body requirements. I know you do powerlifting, right? So, it's like you'll have like a body type of powerlifter, like they'll be like a good, right? All the things that are like the body type of a synchronized swimmer was not me. Like I am not naturally like tiny. I am not naturally flexible. Like I don't have the best toe point. Like all of these things that are the ticks for talent were not there. But I was willing to work hard and I was willing to be a good team player and I was willing to like work on my mindset. And I truly believe and I know that is what has given me the capacity to end up making it to the Olympics. And then after that, continuing to compete for 3 more years. And so I was on the team for 5 years in total and really make this impossibility possible. And so that's why I'm so passionate about what I do now. And so that's kind of my story. But like I really emphasize the fact that I was average. I really was average, but I was average with a fire inside of me and the willing to work and go for it and go all in and also work on my mindset. And that is what created, the woman that I am today, which I'm so proud of.
And you should definitely be proud of yourself. Like that story is just, it should be able to resonate with all of our listeners today. Like everyone probably has a dream that they really want to fulfill and they think that they're not really enough to be able to fulfill that dream, but they should go for it. If, like you said, it makes you happy, then go for it.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of you and coaching your clients, what would be the best advice, or normally what would be the first thing that you let them know, the first piece of advice that you let them work with when you begin working with them?
Yeah, it totally depends on, what their kind of experiences and their goals are. But if we use the kind of structure of saying like they're wanting to go after a big dream or a big goal, I think the number one thing, after we've worked on our belief systems is our mindset. Because, what I don't include in that story, because it's a long, beautiful story, is the days where I wanted to give up, the days where it was really hard, the days where I was so tired and so exhausted that I didn't know that I could go any further, the days where I didn't feel like I didn't believe in myself, the days where I didn't feel like I was good enough. But the ability to stick to our dream and our goal and our desire, despite that feeling, that's what mindset is. Because what happens is, it's easy to dream, right? It's much more challenging. And I say the hard work comes in the mindset that it takes to get you from here to there. Because we think that the dream part is hard. No, the dreaming is easy. It's fun to dream. We love to daydream. Yeah. But the real grit, the real power comes in when you believe in yourself, even when it doesn't seem to be looking like it's that way yet. Even when you feel tired that day, even when you're not getting the results that you want, even when you feel like no one is watching and no one cares and no one is showing up. That is what makes grit and mindset powerful. And so that's why in so many ways, I think the self-worth is inherently powerful, but also the mindset, because I see so many people give up on themselves when they're 3 feet from gold, right? You could be literally like 1 centimeter away from a breakthrough and we go, it's too hard, I'm walking away. The things that we create in this life do have challenges and are hard in some ways, but it's also so gratifying when we go there. And so my challenge, for all the listeners and to people that are starting on this journey is work on your mindset, because that will be such a fuel to your flame.
Yes, that is exactly true. And there are so many lessons that you have shared with us and the audience today, Danielle. So if there is one very special quote or motto that you would like to share with us, what would that be?
Okay, I have a few. I'm going to just say one though. Okay, in the spirit of being born in Canada, I'm going to use Wayne Gretzky. His quote, this is actually one of my favorite quotes, is you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. If I didn't take the shot of trying to get to the Olympic Games, I would never be an Olympian. And so I remind everyone that is listening that I get that you're afraid of failure. I get that you're afraid of judgment. I see you so deeply in that, but take the shot because you never know where it could take you.
And that is a really good closing for us. That's amazing. Thank you so much for all that you have shared with us, Danielle. You have such an amazing story, and I hope that our listeners, our audience, can be able to really absorb all that you have shared with us today. Now, of course, everyone joining us, I would like to let you know that I won't be leaving you guys hanging. I will share with you all of Danielle's work, all the links, all the sites that she has, and you'll get all of that in our description box. So just go check that out. Again, thank you so much for joining us today, Danielle. It was such a pleasure to have you with us today. All right, guys, so we are closing up today's episode of the BetterU Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you guys again next Friday. So come check everything out, all our past episodes as well in our YouTube channel. All right. So Coach RKaye here. And as always, I'd like to let you know that never give up on your movement journey because it's never too late to move. Bye-bye, guys.